Hello guys, I hope wherever you're watching us from, you're having a great time. This is AfriPost and welcome to today's video. Now, the Kenyan president has come out to blame Ford Foundation for funding protests in Kenya. He claims that external forces have colluded together to ensure that the government of the day is destabilized. And this comes in the heat of consistent 3 weeks of continuous demonstrations. And many of the causes of these demonstrations has been highlighted by many media houses. One of the major causes was the desire by President Ruto's government to increase taxes on important commodities that are used by people on a daily basis. Some of them included bread, diapers, and even sanitary pads. And this really angered youths and made them to go to the streets and demand for rejection of the bill and also call for resignation of President William Ruto.
We have no use for anarchy and violence and destruction of property and loss of life. And I want to call out those who are behind the anarchy in Kenya, those who are behind the sponsoring the chaos in the Republic of Kenya. Shame on them, because they are sponsoring violence against our democratic nation. Mimi nataka niulize watu wa Ford Foundation watuambie hiyo pesa wanatoa ifanye fujo ndio wapate faida gani? We are going to call them out and we are going to tell them if they are not interested in democracy in Kenya, if they are going to sponsor violence, if they are going to sponsor anarchy, we are going to call them out and we are going to tell them they either style up or they leave.
Now, many times, for those who have known William Ruto, he has always played to be the darling of the West. Just a few months ago, he was in the United States, where he ensured that Kenya is designated as a major non-NATO ally to United States. Many people said that that was a positive thing, and others criticized it because they said that Kenya was selling itself to United States. So, why is William Ruto behaving this way? And what really is happening here? I struggle to understand why these things are happening. But one speaker here, Shahid Bolsen, has really broken down the situation in Kenya and explained what is going on in totality. Let's watch this, then come back and talk about it more.
Well, the situation in Kenya with the protests. Well, first of all, we'll say that the president of Kenya has long been regarded as a Western client, if not a puppet. And that's not without reason. He has regularly ingratiated himself with the West. He has been pursuing neoliberal economic policies within Kenya that have made the lives of the people increasingly miserable. And so this has resulted, predictably, in protests that began peacefully and turned violent because of the police. The police shot at peaceful protesters. Now, they're calling for the removal of the president of Kenya, William Ruto. Now, what I would say about that situation is that it's similar to the situation before it in Sudan, and it's similar to the situation before Sudan in Egypt, where the people are protesting against the government for policies that the government is implementing, which the government is held hostage to implement in favor of multinational corporations and international lenders, chief among them the International Monetary Fund. In fact, the bill that stirred the protests in Kenya initially is basically an IMF bill, a structural adjustment reform, an austerity measure that is being demanded by the IMF of the Ruto government. So my opinion, as was my opinion with regards to Sudan, when Omar Bashir was being blamed for the economic policies that were the austerity measures, the austerity economic policies, the neoliberal policies that he was implementing under coercion in Sudan, and the protests against Sisi because of the neoliberal policies that he was implementing under coercion. My position has always been that these leaders, these politicians, exist to take the blame for the policies that they're implementing on behalf of private sector power. That's why they exist. That's why I call them effigies. because they exist to implement the policies that will make them unpopular, and then they'll take the brunt of the unpopularity. They'll take the brunt of public anger, and then they'll be removed, but the policies will remain, because the source of the policies is the private sector, is the international private sector. It's the OCGFC. It's the Western multinational corporations and lenders, financial institutions, and so forth. Again, specifically, the International Monetary Fund. This is your problem. And now, who is the International Monetary Fund doing what it's doing? Who is it doing it for? It's not doing it for Kenya. We all know that. And it wasn't doing it for Sudan, and it's not doing it for Egypt. So who are they doing it for? And when you identify who they're doing it for, then those are the private sector players, those are the power brokers that it makes more sense to me that the population should be protesting and should be directing their activism and their opposition towards those actors on the political and economic scene in Kenya, not the government. Now, I'm not speaking up in favor of William Ruto. There's a lot of problems with his government, certainly, without question, just as there were problems with the government of Omar Bashir, and there's certainly a multitude of problems with the government of Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. But when you're talking about specifically the way that they're managing the economy, you have to understand that they are not the managers of the economy. Their lenders are the managers of the economy, and the lenders are managing the economy in such a way as to benefit Western multinational corporations. So, for example, in Kenya, you should look at Coca-Cola. You should look at General Electric. You should look at Standard Chartered. You should look at Barclays Bank. Look at Safaricom, Nestle, IBM, and look at Toyota. These are the beneficiaries of the economic policies. These are the beneficiaries of neoliberalism. They're the ones who are holding the government hostage. And they're doing it by means of the IMF. So your president, and again, whether it's Kenya or whether it's Sudan or whether it's Egypt or whether it's Pakistan and many other places around the world, and increasingly you can say the same thing about countries in Europe, these governments, these politicians are hostages, and the policies that they're implementing are essentially like when you see a hostage being forced to read a list of demands. You don't get angry at the hostage for the demands that he's making on behalf of the hostage taker. And that's what the government does. That's what your president does. That's what your prime minister is doing. They're just reading the list of demands that they have been told that they that must be met in order for them to not be eliminated. And the one that's going to be eliminated here isn't the president, it's your whole economy. Because the IMF has considerable power to sabotage and cripple your economy if you don't do what they say. That's why it's better for you if you never get involved with them in the first place. And this is why I've said time and time again that it's much better for Muslim countries, for countries in the global south, for countries in Africa, to do business with China, to do business with Russia, while they still can, while those countries are still interested in investing in Africa, in the global south, Latin America, and the Muslim world, and so on, while they still have the money to spend, you ought to take the money from them rather than taking the money from the IMF. Because the IMF and Western lenders generally are not actually interested in you paying them back. They don't want you to pay them back. Because when they loan you money, they're calling it a loan, and you think it's a loan, but what they're actually doing is buying you. So they don't want the money back. They want what they bought, which is your whole country.
Now, the Ford Foundation responded back and gave a statement that I would read partly that says, while we acknowledge the right of every Kenyan to peacefully advocate for a just and equitable country, we repudiate any actions or speech that are hateful or advocate violence against any institution, individual, or community. We do not fund or sponsor the recent protests against the finance bill and have a strictly non-partisan policy for all of our grant making. So this is to say that Ford Foundation has not in any way involved itself in the current protests that are going on in Kenya. And therefore, it is really sad to see William Ruto degenerating into what he is right now. Another thing that you must note is the fact that William Ruto played into the hands of these Western nations. It would be very stupid of him to come out now and start saying that the West is funding his opponents. And I think one thing that is happening here is just as has been explained by Shahid Bolsen, because he says the West has a strategy through these multilateral organizations to ensure that wherever they go, they make them poor, they bring confusion, and at the end of the day, they lead to fall of governments. So right now, William Ruto is going through a lot of things because they invited IMF to be part of their strategy, where they wanted to ensure that Kenya is able to pay the debts that it owes. But then again, as Shahid Bolsen says, these people are not interested in your survival. All they want is to ensure that their interests are kept and are protected. It is very sad to see what is going on in Kenya, but I think it is time for youth to come out and fight for what they have desired to fight for. So I cannot come out and condemn them. All I know is that most of them have been very, very peaceful, have been very respectful of the laws of the land, and it is just some political machinations that are taking place to kind of put a bad name towards these people who are protesting and calling for accountability of their government. So that is something that is really worth watching. I like what Shahid Bolsen has said, and he has tried to really explain it deeper, because for him, he's also kind of trying to sympathize with William Ruto, because he sees that he got himself into a mess and he has played within the books of these people. But time is coming where now these people cannot help him, but he has to face the wrath of the citizens. I don't know what you think about this, but if you're watching us for the first time, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, like this video, and also share. Please also remember to give us your opinion down in the comment section so that we may also understand your perspective about the issue. Thank you, and may the good Lord bless you. Goodbye.